as it goes live, I can start sharing it.
And we're live now. So everybody, welcome. I'm live, obviously, with Patrick Fransco. And Patrick, take it away.
Hey guys, thanks for being patient with us. We actually are dealing with a little bit of a technical issue with Facebook, so I'm going to share just give me a second while we share this out, but if you can go ahead and share this out. We're going to be talking about the Payment Protection Program, which is the loan forgiveness program for small businesses. I had shared this out to a bunch of the groups, and then I had an issue going Facebook Live, so Eric jumped in so we could do this in this format. So I'm just going to share this out to a couple different places, and I just want to make sure that everybody's able to see it. So anyway, just give me 1 second because I want to make sure everybody that wants to see this can see it. And then Eric, I'm sending it to Window Film Pros, and then if you want to send it to any of the other groups, that'd be great.
I had muted myself. So yeah, I'm sharing it in the groups right now, and we did get a thumbs up in the comments. So I assume we sound and look good. So we'll just give it a second for everybody to get in here and get going.
And if you want to, Eric, the one thing, I mean, obviously with us being on in this format that's actually beneficial is if you can kind of keep an eye on any questions that come in, and if you see anything comes in that you want to throw my way, that'd be awesome, because I definitely want to make sure I'm catching anybody's questions. So let's go ahead and get started. So basically, I wanted to come on board because one of the things is iMagnet Management. We work with a lot of small businesses all around the country, as well as being a small business ourselves. So we've been digging into a lot of like what the programs out there are for small businesses with this new government program. And there's a lot of confusion as far as what's out there and what's not, and what the differences between the programs are. So we wanted to make sure that we got, I'm certainly no banker, but I've spent a lot of time in the last couple days talking to my banker and doing a lot of research and reading a lot of documents. And I wanted to just come on here today and share the information that I had found so that maybe that could be helpful to you guys. And then, if I'd encourage you to check with your local banker, and we'll get into this a little bit more because I certainly don't have every answer to every question, but I think I have a lot of good information that you would want to know, and I think it's something that a lot of us are going to be able to benefit from. So with that being said, this program is called the Payment Protection Program, and it's a loan it's a loan program that is actually tied into a loan forgiveness type program. So you can take this loan, it's an 8-week loan, and if you follow certain guidelines, you can get this loan at the end of those 8 weeks completely forgiven. So that means you're never going to have to pay it back. So this is pretty good stuff for small businesses. Almost seems too good to be true, but it actually, again, I've dug into it significantly, and it's not. The application process for this loan starts this Friday, so you really need to be getting on this ahead of time, and that's why I wanted to get you this information today. So let's just jump in, and I actually am going to have some cheater notes just so that you guys are going to have the information, because this loan is primarily designed, if you want to think of it this way, is the government would rather you as an employer be able to keep your employees on staff, because if they get let go or furloughed or laid off, they're going to take unemployment. So one way or the other, it's going to hit the government budget, but they'd rather keep companies intact so that when we get on the other side of this, that the companies are already still intact and they can just pick right back up where they left off. So this program genuinely is a way for you to be able to continue to pay your employees, pay your rent, pay your utilities, pay things like that with this loan, and at the end of the 8 weeks, submit the appropriate documentation and get the entire loan, the part of it that you used for the applicable things, completely waived, so you don't have to pay it back. And even if there's some things you need to spend on that don't get waived, you get a 2-year loan at a 0.5% interest. So if you run into something that doesn't qualify to be waived, you still might be able to utilize the funds for that, and you'd have 2 years to pay it back at a 0.5% interest. But if you follow a couple guidelines, a big chunk of it will be able to be forgiven. So, okay, so these loans, as I mentioned a minute ago, these loan proceeds are to be able to cover, and this is word for word, cover payroll costs, some mortgage interest, rent, utility costs, and essentially the caveat is they want you to keep your employees, so that you need to keep your employees and the amount you were paying them intact. They basically use a formula to figure out, based on what you were paying your employees, what essentially a 2-month period amount of money is. So all your employee expenses added up, your rent, things like that, and then multiply that by 2. Actually, it's 2.5 for a little bit of buffer, but that's the maximum amount of the loan. None of us will qualify or need to worry about the maximum amount of the loan because it's $10 million. And I don't think anybody listening to this is going to bump into that cap. But so let's just say, for the sake of argument, that your monthly payroll costs as well as rent and everything like that came to $10,000 or $15,000. You would be able to essentially be approved for a loan of, say, $30,000. With that money, they expect you to keep your employees employed, pay your rent, do all the things you're supposed to be doing. And at the end of the 8 weeks, you would be able to then submit the appropriate paperwork to show that you used the funds to keep your employees employed, paid your rent, doing all those things. And then within 60 days of you submitting that paperwork, the loan is basically waived. The government pays the loan off, it goes away. Couple different things to think about. The other great thing about this loan is you can use any SBA approved lender. So you don't have to go through special SBA process. You can walk right into your local bank if they're an SBA approved lender, and they can help you with this loan process. They are also the people that you'll submit the paperwork to at the end of the 8 weeks to get the loan waived. So you can work with whoever your local banker is, whoever you're comfortable working with. You don't have to go through some onerous SBA process to get this done. It's actually pretty streamlined. The other thing is, unlike a lot of other SBA products, this particular one has no personal guarantee. So you don't have to put collateral of your house or anything up for this. The idea of this, again, is to keep your employees employed and for you not to have to let them go and for them to be on unemployment. So it's totally different than the other SBA loan program that a lot of people are talking about that requires personal guarantees and collateral. So that being said, I think we talked about when you can apply. For small businesses and sole proprietorships, you can apply starting this Friday. For independent contractors and self-employed individuals, you could apply starting the following Friday, April 10th. Again, where can you apply? Through any SBA approved lender. And who can apply? All small businesses, nonprofits, anything like that, sole proprietorships, self-employed individuals, independent contractors with 500 or fewer employees. So again, I think most of the people that are listening to this are going to easily qualify for less than 500 employees and less than $10 million in a 2-month period. So the process, as far as what documents and things like that, I'll talk about that in a little bit. The program is only open until June 30th. So I don't know if they're going to run out of funds or things like that. It opens up this Friday, as I mentioned, but it closes June 30th. So I would recommend that you get in touch with your banker this week, get your application in, and be upfront on this so the program doesn't run out of money or run out of funding or something like that. You can only take out one of these loans. So if you have multiple partners, you'd have to submit as a partner for the business. You can't do it multiple times. You can't do it once and then be done with the 8 weeks and submit to do it again. So it's a one-time thing. And basically we had mentioned earlier, what can you use the loans for? Payroll costs, including benefits, are the number one thing. Interest on your mortgage obligations. That has to be on a mortgage that was incurred before February 15th. So you couldn't have just signed for something last week. Rent under lease agreements that were in force before February 15th. Again, if it's something you just signed a lease on last week, you're not going to be able to submit that. And then utilities for service that began before February 15th. So essentially they're saying you can't scramble to like take out a lease and sign up for utilities and then submit those. You had to have these things in place February 15th of this year. But again, payroll, interest obligations, rent, and utilities that were in place before February 15th, you could submit. What you might want to ask, like, what counts as payroll? Salary, wages, commissions, things like that. The state and local taxes you would pay, your payroll taxes can be submitted to be waived back. Employee benefits, like if you have medical payments, things like that, those can be submitted. So essentially, any payroll qualifies that's less than $100,000 per employee. So if somebody makes over $100,000, they don't qualify for this. But again, I think in many situations, most of you would have people that would qualify. So we already talked about how much the loan could be. 10 million is the cap. I don't think that applies. So how much of the loan will be forgiven? Here's one of the things that comes up, like, sounds too good to be true. Why would they just waive the loan? Again, they're trying to keep people from going on unemployment, and they're either going to pay them on unemployment or they're going to pay you to keep them as an employee. So one way or the other, the government's going to foot the bill, and they'd rather you keep them as an employee. So when we get beyond this, we can just start things up that much quicker. At least that's their seeming motivation. So how much of the loan will be forgiven? You will owe money when your loan is due if you use the loan amount for anything other than payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, over the 8 weeks of the loan. So this is over an 8-week period of time. So basically, and you will also potentially owe part of that back if you don't maintain your staff. So if you take the loan out and you don't keep your staff, the purpose of this is to keep your staff employed. Essentially, again, I'm not giving you all the details because obviously there's a lot, but I'm trying to give you the overview. As far as loan forgiveness, after the 2 months or after the 8 weeks, you would compile the paperwork to show that you continued to pay payroll, that you paid rent, you did all these things. You would submit it to the bank that you went to get the loan, and within 60 days, the loan would essentially be paid off. So it's a pretty simple process. It's handled locally, and the idea is that if we can get businesses 8 weeks down the road, we hopefully are going to have this in the rearview mirror, and businesses can pick back up and start again. So this is an 8-week program. It's designed for you to keep your business intact for the next 8 weeks, continue to pay your employees and things like that. And if you do those things, the government is basically saying you're not going to have to pay that money back. We're going to forgive the loan. So it's a pretty sweet deal. I wanted to get out in front of this with a lot of small businesses because I feel like people don't really understand the program and understand that this is a way that you can potentially allow your business to survive. For 2 months and get to the other side of this, where a lot of people might be stressing right now over, can I pay the rent on my building? Can I keep my employees? It took me a long time to get the right group of people on my team. Can I keep them, or am I going to have to let them go and hope that I can get them back at a future time? This allows you to keep everything intact, and I think if you're a small business and you're not calling your bank in the morning to ask them about this, you're missing a huge opportunity. I think that everybody should look into this and take advantage of it if you can. Again, even if you utilize some of that loan that they offer you, because it's 2.5 times the monthly amount. So there's a little bit of extra above and beyond. And again, you can talk to your banker about the details, but even if you utilize some of the loan for something that's not one of those categories, at the end of the 60 days, it would become a loan that the part that you used for non-authorized uses would become a loan at a 0.5% interest rate, 0.5% for 2 years. So even if you were in a pinch and you had to pay off a piece of equipment or something that might not qualify, you're still getting a heck of a deal, 0.5% interest for 2 years to do that. So again, I'm certainly no banker. I don't have the answer to every question, but I've spent a lot of time looking into this, and I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't jump on a Facebook Live or something like this to share this information, because I know so many small businesses out there are really stressing tonight about how they're going to get the next 8 weeks. And this is a way for you to be able to do that. So, Eric, I don't know if anybody's like asking any questions or whatever, but I'd be glad to give any information I can on this.
So haven't been many questions yet, but I think that's just maybe a sign of how thorough your information was. But there was a couple comments. Scott said, "Does anybody know if essential function if tinting is an essential function?" He's located in the Florida Panhandle.
I mean, it doesn't really, for this particular program that we're talking about today, whether you're in a essential job or not, really doesn't matter. It doesn't. You don't have to be an essential occupation to qualify for this. This is for any small business.
So Brian Haas asked, we laid one guy off 2 weeks ago, so he could get on unemployment ASAP. Would that affect our eligibility, that they already let go of that person?
I think that there is a provision for rehiring. It says you have until June 30th to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. So if you let the person go after February and you use this program to bring them back, it would qualify. So it does make a provision for somebody that maybe has already taken that step to utilize this program to bring them back. So again, there is a provision that specifically says that. I would talk to your local lender and ask that specific question, because your local lender is going to be the company that you actually submit the paperwork to get the loan forgiven. So you definitely, again, I want to pass along what I know, but I don't want anybody to take this as being the,
end all,
about this. I'm trying to make sure you get enough information to motivate you this week to get to your bank and to get set up for this. You're going to begin applying as soon as Friday, and my recommendation would be that I would be at the front of that line getting that done.
So Brian added a follow-up question. He said, so if they don't get paid till May 1st, do we qualify? I think I understand the best, like, it's going to come down to when did you let go of that employee, if it was after February 15th or if it was before February 15th, right?
Here's exactly how it's written. Rehiring. You have until June 30th to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. That tells me that as long as the person is back on before June 30th, it sounds like you're still okay, even if as long as they're back as a full-time employee before June 30th.
Right.
But again, I'm reading to you exactly from, I spent a lot of time talking to my banker and talking to other people about, the program, and this is literally my cheat sheet, but this is not like me handwriting things. This is exactly how it's written. So it sounds like it would qualify.
So Sean Roach asked, what about single member S Corp operations that don't have payroll set up yet?
I think for S Corps, obviously, the payroll, let me get back to the page that says what qualifies as payroll. Give me 1 second. So again, salary, wages, commissions, or tips, and it does make a provision for even sole proprietors and independent contractors. So I'm assuming that payroll, if somebody was in that situation, like a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, it would be wages. And they would probably just look at your 2018 W-2 or your 2018 taxes to determine, like, if you made if you said $75,000, what's $75,000 divided by 12? Like, what are you actually paying yourself, essentially? So again, that particular question might be something that you would want to talk to, your lender about, but it seems like they're really trying to make this program have a pretty wide net to fit everybody, including sole proprietors and things like that. So it seems like they're trying to make it so that they're not going to just exclude somebody on a technicality for this. So I would check with your banker, though.
All right. So Billy had said in the comments that when you said get on it, you mean because this is for all businesses. This is huge. It's obviously one of those things, like if you're kind of in the middle of, hey, is this worth my effort or not? You're going to find out if it's worth your effort in a few weeks from now, in a month from now, in a couple months from now, when it may be too late, and you may be too late getting in on that. So it partly could be something you need right now, or it could be something that you're saving yourself from being in a bad scenario in a few weeks or in a few months.
And I looked at the application process for this. Right now, again, you can't apply until Friday, but the application process is not very onerous. I mean, obviously, you've got to produce some payroll records to show, some things like that. You've got to produce payroll records. You got to produce like a tax document, whatever, to prove what you're saying is true. You actually have to sign that what you're providing is truthful too. So they're trying to keep people from trying to scam the system. But literally the application was like a 2.5-page form. I mean, it was not overly onerous to do it. And since most of us have been getting together our taxes over the last number of weeks and stuff like that anyway, most of this stuff should be readily at hand to do this, I would think. That it shouldn't, but nothing they were requiring seemed to me like, oh, that's going to be, really hard to come up with. It all seemed pretty straightforward. Just a way to justify, if they're going to hand you some money, they want a way to justify, that you're saying your payroll is $15,000 a month. They want something to show that indeed, is what your payroll is. So, but it's not a, I have a form right here. It says, from my banker saying, what you need to do. So it says begin to gather documentation that will assist in sizing of the loan and facilitating the application. Copies of the IRS Form 941, which is the employer's quarterly federal tax return. If you're a business, you probably can easily get your hands on, your quarterly tax returns. The dollar amounts included in the 2019 Forms 941 that are attributable to the following: compensation of any individual employee in excess of the annual salary of $100,000, compensation of any employee whose principal place of residence is outside the United States. So they're saying if somebody's making over 100, or if they're a resident outside the United States, they can't be worked into the calculation for this. The payroll ledger for 2019, payroll showing payroll costs by employee. That would be things like showing like commissions, vacation pay, what you pay from a medical standpoint, sick leave, retirement benefits, state and local taxes. Again, a lot of businesses, if you're using a payroll service, your payroll service can probably generate this and send it over to you pretty quickly. Payroll costs do not include the compensation of an employee in excess of $100,000. We already talked about that. Taxes imposed or withheld under FICA. So your Social Security part of it doesn't count. And any compensation of an employee whose principal place of residence is outside the United States. We already covered that. And then also just, if you could have your payroll ledger for year-to-date 2020, like what you're currently paying, if it varies from what it was in 2019. The other thing is, if you are a partner in a business and anybody that's a partner that has over 20% ownership stake in your business has to sign on this program. So you can't unilaterally do it. If you have 3 people in your business and everybody owns 33.3%, you're all going to have to submit for this together as a group. You can't submit as yourself if you have any partner over 20%. You have to submit together for it. So, but again, I mean, I've done a lot of looking at it, and, at first it might, seem like, hey, that sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? I could tell you that it seems to me there really is no catch, and this is really an effort by the government to say, if all these employers let these people go, they're going to hit the unemployment rolls anyway. So we're going to pay one way or the other. It's just that much better for the U.S. economy for them to stay employed with their current employer than to go onto the unemployment rolls. So,
So Sean added a follow-up question. He said, so should we contact the bank that we use every day for business banking, or is there a specific bank we should go to? He said almost all banks are closed right now. How do you go about it in these times?
well, you can use any bank that's an SBA approved lender. So you could Google SBA approved financial institutions, and it'll give you a list of banks. So if your bank is on there, if your bank is a SBA approved lender, they would qualify. And even though most banks are closed for walk-in traffic, you still have the ability to. These things, from what I understand from my banker, this is all going to be done digitally through their portal. So the banks are already setting up a way for you to be able to complete this application digitally and do it. So I would call your branch office, the one you use every day, and just ask them, hey, are you an SBA approved lender that can do this program? One of the things my banker told me to make sure I made a point of telling people is there's going to be a lot of people coming out of the woodwork right now in the next week or two telling you that they're an organization that specializes in helping you get this loan or things like that. That's all BS. Pardon my French. That's all BS. Just go to your bank. Find a bank that's an SBA approved lender and go to your bank. You don't need to go through any middleman. You don't need to go through any intermediary or any other company. And again, I feel like one of the things they're worried about is that there are going to be companies coming out of the woodwork to say, oh, we specialize in this. And the reality is it's probably a scam, or they're probably going to take a cut of the loan or somehow get paid. And just stay away from that. Just go to your local bank, and you're probably going to be able to do it right with them.
So Mar said, no shame in doing this. If you qualify and need to do it, hope this prepares everyone for the future. We can't be caught with our pants down and always expect the government to save us. Certainly lesson learned, hopefully. This won't be the last lesson we probably learn in our lifetime. Hopefully not, but
Sure.
It's a big one. Scott asked independent contractor info, and then Rob Oranges had a follow-up answer, maybe helps with that. He said, some proprietors can qualify, independent contractors can too, as well as employee-owned businesses. So that probably just scoops in just about all scenarios.
They're not trying, from what I can gather, they are not trying to create situations that exclude people from this. It seems like it's written pretty broadly to try to allow as many different types of people to qualify as possible. So, I would say if there's even a question, it doesn't hurt you to call your banker and have a discussion about this. And I feel like, to the previous point about there not being any shame, I feel like, the reality for a lot of people is that, your business is not in this position because of anything you did per se to your business. I mean, nobody could have anticipated government shutdowns. We talked on a recent podcast, I believe, when we did the roundtable, and we said, even in 2008 or even after 9/11, I mean, business certainly suffered for a couple days and then started to trickle back. But don't beat yourself up. I mean, granted, we should all plan a little bit better, but it's pretty hard to plan for revenue going to zero, your shop being closed. I mean, give yourself a little bit of break to where, even if you planned for a bad situation, like your revenue went down by 50%, you would think, man, that's a huge hit. Like, revenue went down by 50%. For a lot of companies, your revenue went down by 100%. You're closed for business. You don't have the ability to bring in revenue. So my point is, the government created this program to try to help make sure as many small businesses come out the far end of this thing as went in the front end. And I would say, for your employees, for your company, don't out of some sense of pride, not look into taking a look at this. It's one of those things I feel like, if it gives your business a chance to survive, you need to take a look at it.
And Maverick had asked if this would apply to mobile tinters. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's not going to be. It's not a matter of if you have a shop or you're mobile. It's as long as you're a registered business, you're probably going to qualify for
Yeah, and
this.
he
Yeah.
and I think the only thing, obviously, one of the things you could get reimbursed for, get forgiven, would be rent costs, and you don't really have potentially any rent costs. And there's probably going to be a long list of things that are excluded, but there's certain things we know are going to be included, and that would be payroll, rent, utilities. Like essentially, they want you to be able to, even if you're closed for business, zero revenue coming in, they want you to be able to pay your employees, pay your rent, and pay your utilities so that your business is still standing at the end of 8 weeks. That's, in a nutshell, that's what the program is.
And Rob Oranges had dropped the link into the application. And then Chris Evanson said that he filled out the application online on the government's website. I just listed my bank name, never needed to go to the bank. So I have that link. It's in the comments and I have it up. Go ahead.
Just be careful, though. There are two things. There's two main programs. There's the SBA loan program that's like the disaster loan program, which is one thing.
Okay.
And then there's this, which is the payment protection program. You can't technically apply for this program until this Friday. So if you applied for a program and you actually were able to apply for a program, it's not this. It may be the other SBA program, but there's no way you could have applied for this program until this Friday. So again, there's other programs people are taking advantage of, but that's not this program.
So this is something that, you have the head start on now because, like you're saying, Friday is going to be the very beginning. So now's the head start into getting all your ducks in a row. So you're one of the first applicants.
Yeah, and again, they're funding it. I want to say, it's a $349 billion of the $2 trillion that they allocated for this thing. 349 of those billion are allocated to this specific program. So it's a pretty huge program, goes without saying. And it's, but I don't know that if you waited, the deadline they say is June 30th, but I sure wouldn't want to count on the fact that money can all get evaporated.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance that if you wait until June to do this, that there won't be any more funding left for this program. I would recommend, worst case scenario, get your application in. It doesn't, you could always decide to hold off on, I just don't want to see, again, when I looked into it, and because I talked to clients all over the country with our company and small businesses primarily, I just didn't want to see anybody miss out on this, especially people in this industry, which I do a lot of business in this industry. And really, I want to see as many people that are part of these groups and part of the people we've interacted with over the years make it through this. And it's like, if you have a program like this that you can take advantage of, I certainly wanted to make sure everybody understood that it was there and had at least the base level of information so that they could try to take advantage of it.
So Mark Guy asked, he said that his guys went on unemployment last week. Biz just slowed down to stay open. Can I put them, Biz, I guess, too slow to stay open. Can I put them back on payroll after next week and still remain closed?
This goes back to what we talked about earlier. At least what I was reading, let me get back to that section. Rehiring. So let's say that you've let somebody go in the previous couple weeks because of the way business is. In order to qualify to begin paying them under this program, rehiring, you have until June 30th, 2020 to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes that you made between February 15th and April 26th. So the way I'm reading that is if you had to let people go, in the month of March because business was that, but you bring them back on and restore them before June 30th, they would qualify for this program. You have to bring them back on. So again, the whole thing with the program, it really doesn't matter if they're working or not. There's a lot of shops that are closed. But the way the program works is if that person goes on unemployment, they're sitting at home and collecting, a government check as well. if they go through this program, they're sitting at home and collecting a check from you. But the difference there is for the economy to bounce back quickly from this, if all the pieces, parts are still assembled, companies are still together, employees are still together, it gives the economy the opportunity to bounce back much faster than if all these people that are unemployed have to now get re-employed and get back to where they, so I feel like that what the government's trying to do with this program is to say, rather than have everything come apart and then have to be put back together, let's try to keep it together, get 8 weeks down the road, and then boom, we take right back off where hopefully we left off.
So, yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I understand it as well. And it makes perfect sense. So, like you said, it's paying one or the other, except in this way, everything will still be assembled and ready to go. The other way, you'll have hurt feelings and disenfranchised, employees and businesses. So Courtney asked, what was the site? I want to read a couple of comments back to back. So Courtney asked, what was the website? You had said that your best bet is to get in touch with an SBA. Was it an SBA approved bank?
Just an SBA approved lender, and most banks are SBA approved lenders. I mean, most major banks are. So unless you're doing business with like a local, like community bank or something like that, if you're doing business with Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America or any of the big names, the likelihood is all those are all SBA approved. So as far as the website, there you could probably find some information. Again, this is the program is called the Paycheck Protection Program, and you could probably find information on the SBA site. The thing I wanted to bring up, though, is there's a lot of confusion between the two SBA programs that are out there. There's an SBA loan program that is, I think, 3.75% interest, and you can stretch it out for 30 years. That's a loan that there's also, in many cases, a personal guarantee required for your business and things like that. And that's actually you taking out a loan to keep your business operating. And that potentially can be a large sum of money that keeps you operating beyond 8 weeks, things like that. And then the loan becomes like a 30-year term at like a fixed 3.75, I believe. That's one program that the government came up with to help small businesses. This one is primarily designed to be a loan forgiveness program so that you get this 8-week loan essentially, and then if you do the right things with that money, the government waives the loan. There's no personal guarantee. There's no collateral. There's nothing like that. So there's a big difference between the two. So just be sure if you go to the SBA website. Again, a couple of people mentioned putting in an application already. My guess is the application they're putting in is for the SBA loan, not this SBA payment protection program. So there are two distinct programs. You just want to make sure you're looking at the right one.
So yeah, the link that Rob had dropped in a little earlier, it's covid19relief.sba.gov, and then he followed up with a comment and said, this application determines whether you are eligible. It's like getting in line. And then Chris Evanson mentioned that the one he filled out, he had said he filled out one online. It was called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan that he filled out.
Yeah, that's the other SBA loan, the disaster relief loan, or the name you just said. That's the other loan, and that might be something that somebody wants to take advantage of too. This particular live stream, I really wanted to just cover this one because for a lot of people, taking out a loan, if they're like, I don't even know what the next 6 months looks like, is a little bit daunting, and they're asking me to put up personal collateral and personal guarantees and things like that. There's a lot of people that even if they want to keep their business intact might be a little bit leery to do that. This gives you an opportunity to hopefully at least get 8 weeks down the road. And hopefully by 8 weeks down the road, we're looking at a little bit different picture than we're looking at today. So this is kind of a temporary 8-week lifeline to get your business 8 weeks down the road that you would never have to, if you use it for the right things, you'd never have to pay back. To me, as a business owner, you owe it to yourself to at least say, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you give yourself the opportunity to get another 8 weeks down the road and see what the horizon looks like then? I mean, even if things look really dark right now, why wouldn't you buy yourself 8 weeks that the government's willing to give you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's no more comments, but obviously, if anybody has any before we get off, or even after, I imagine, just leave any questions in the comments. There were a lot of comments just saying thank you, which I didn't read one by one, but the most recent one was from Marty, and he just said he appreciates your time and your diligence, Patrick. And I mean, I think that goes without said. This stuff to me is like super boring to look into, but it's super important to look into. So it's nice that you put that together. You distinguish between the two different types of loans, which are obviously confusing, and I think it's more than appreciated. Tammy just dropped in a comment, and she asked, "What's the name of the loan that you don't have to pay back?" So one more time, the loan we're speaking about today, or you're speaking about today, is which one?
It's the actual name of the loan is called the Paycheck Protection Program, and I think people also refer to it as the CARES program. But the paperwork I'm looking at, which is actual, more documents, refer to it as the Paycheck Protection Program. And it's also through the SBA. So it is. That's why I think it's so confusing, because both of these programs are actually through the SBA, but they're two distinctly different programs. And again, this was, I think, my intent here was just to share enough information to hopefully so that you understand enough to contact your banker. Because to me, the big thing is, again, I'm not coming on here saying I have every answer to every question. I've looked into it enough to know that this is something that's out there. It all seems pretty straightforward. It can be done through your local institution. And if this live stream does nothing more than just encourages you to reach out to your banker and get specific details about this, I would. But to me, once I kind of learned what the program was, I kind of felt like I would be remiss and not be doing my job as saying that, our business primarily works with small businesses and things like that. I wouldn't feel right if I didn't do something like this and just say, let's just get the information out there. If people can benefit from it, that makes me feel great. If people, ultimately you got to do what you're going to do as a business owner with it. But to me, I've looked into it enough to where I don't really see any reason why a business owner wouldn't look into doing this. It just seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah. I mean, they put it there for a reason. They put it in place for a reason. From everything you described, it sounds like it's going to be, open to most, if not everyone. So to not take advantage of it doesn't make sense. But
and again, as I find out more information, I'd be happy to share it. If you have any questions, some of you might be watching this after the fact. We'll share this video in the groups. So if there's questions that come in after the fact, I'll do my best to sort of try to monitor the post and answer any questions that I can. And if I get any new information as the coming days come by, maybe we do another live stream or just put out another post about it. But again, the important thing right now is that the window opens up on Friday. And if nothing else, if I would find out what's involved with your lender to at least get that pre-application in, get your name in the hat, get in line for, as Rob said, it sounds like that link is sort of a way for you to run some numbers through and just see if you qualify. But it seems to me like it's it's a pretty wide net. I think a lot of you would qualify. From what I know of the industry and the structure of most of the businesses in the industry, it seems to me like a lot of you would qualify.
And Rob actually just dropped a comment in here, and he said, you can apply at sba.gov for the EDIL, the CARES, and when you apply, you can request the emergency $10,000 grant through the Paycheck Protection Program. So sba.gov sounds like, the place to go, get all that started.
Yeah, and again, what I would encourage people to do, though, is not feel like you have to. A lot of people I know that have worked with the SBA in the past have not had a great experience with dealing with all the SBA. This is a program where the way that it was rolled out, at least talking to my personal banker, this is going to be taken care of through your local banks. And I don't know, if you have a relationship with somebody specific at your local bank, but to me, if you do, that would be the person I would contact to go through, rather than go through some bureaucratic quagmire on SBA websites and things like that, I think the best thing for you to do is contact your local banker and try to process it through them. Because at least from what I understand from my banker, everything about this is going to be handled by them at my local branch. I don't have to do one single iota thing with the SBA. It's all going to be handled through my local bank.
And one other question Chris Evanson asked was pros and cons, single owner, operator versus employees. Is that, Chris, in regards to how this program works? Or I guess, Patrick, do you?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is.
Yeah, just pros and cons of single owner, operator versus employees. As far as this program's concerned, it doesn't really necessarily matter, right?
I mean, if you're a single owner operator, my guess is you might be organized as a sole proprietor or an independent contractor. And at least the language that's used in the the documentation here is, starting April 3rd, small businesses and sole proprietorships can apply to receive the loans to cover the payroll and other expenses through existing SBA loan lenders. Starting April 10th, independent contractors and self-employed individuals can apply to receive loans to cover their payroll and other certain expenses through existing SBA loan. So you're talking about small businesses, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals. Pretty much covers everybody. I mean, the only real people that are left out of this is somebody that has a 2-month burn rate, a payroll that's in excess of $10 million, which again, I don't think that applies, and people that have over 500 employees. And I don't think that applies either. So I feel like, again, I certainly am not on here saying I have every answer to every question. I'm just trying to encourage people. A lot of people right now are discouraged. They're having to let people go. They're having to try to figure out how they're going to pay their rent on their building when they can't get any revenue in. And here's an avenue that potentially can not only help you with that, but help you in a way that if you utilize those funds for those reasons, you don't have to worry about paying them back at the end of the loan and at the end of the 8 weeks. And it seems like the loan forgiveness happens within 60 days of you turning in all the appropriate paperwork. So this to me seems like it's a pretty tidy program. Now you just have to you have to make sure if they give you a $30,000 loan, because the way it seems like it happens is they do the calculation, and if your 2-month burn with rent and everything is $30,000, you would get $30,000 deposited into your account. This is the way my banker is explaining it to me. You get a $30,000 deposit in your account. If you take that $30,000 and use it willy-nilly on a variety of different things, and you can't submit the documentation at the end of the 8 weeks to say that you used it for payroll, rent, all those other things we talked about, that $30,000 becomes a loan. So you have to be careful. You have to go into it with the mindset that the money you use needs to be used for the things that it's set out to be used for, and not used. But again, let's say that it's 30,000, but you don't use all 30,000, but you use, the way I understand it, say you use 4,000 of it to pay off a piece of machinery or something like that doesn't qualify for loan forgiveness. The part that doesn't qualify for loan forgiveness becomes a 2-year loan at 0.5% interest. So even in that case, that's a pretty sweet deal. I mean, nobody's going to give you money for 2 years for 0.5% interest. But again, if you stick to the rules, most of that loan amount should be forgiven, if not all of it, as long as you stick to the rules.
It's pretty impressive that there's a program like this so quick there, because it kind of felt like everybody's on their own, but this actually seems like a very viable program that should keep a lot of people in business.
Well, and again, I think if you look at it, like I said, it's an 8-week program, so it's not meant to be a long-term solution. It's meant to fit the problem, which is, hey, we need to get people 8 weeks down the road. If we get people 8 weeks down the road, hopefully we're getting back to, somewhat business as usual 8 weeks from now. So this is to get people 8 weeks down the road. And I think the government really looked at it like we're going to be either taking the money out of our left pocket or our right pocket. Because if all these small businesses let everybody go, they're all going to be on unemployment. So one way or another, we're going to be spending this money. But again, I think, and again, I don't want to say that I was in, when they're drafting this, but it seems like the motivation to me is that they recognize that keeping these organizations and these small businesses intact is going to allow for a faster rebound once we get beyond this, rather than it just being mass chaos. And as you mentioned earlier, it's one thing I didn't bring up, but if you have to let somebody go and they're unemployed, even if they're taken care of on unemployment, there is a potential for some bitter feelings and some hard feelings of somebody feeling like you had to put them on unemployment, where this can keep you from really even having to deal with that. I mean, you could say, you keep them on your staff. A lot of you have spent a lot of time really cultivating a really great team, and you don't want to see that team, get exploded and maybe not be able to reassemble it at the end of this. This gives you at least an 8-week opportunity to try to keep that team together. And hopefully in 8 weeks, we're looking at a much better horizon, and you're right back and off to the races with this. And that, I think, is the goal of the plan, is to just try to buy small businesses an 8-week window here.
Yep. Well, no other questions in the comments.
Okay.
So
I mean, again, if you guys leave questions, I'm going to post this on a variety of places as well. Anybody that is watching this after the fact of it being live, I will do my best to answer any questions that you might have. Obviously, the timeliness of this is, important. So, some of these questions might be answered. My encouragement to you is, if you're watching this after the fact, the very first thing I would do is, I'd be glad to answer a question, but the very first thing I would have on my task list is call my banker.
And Chris Evans says, thanks. Chris, thanks for watching, and thanks for the questions. And if anybody has any questions, or even just anything to contribute, any of your experiences as you're going through this, I mean, please drop them in there as well, because this was a lot of great information, but I'm sure there's always going to be more to it. Things are always evolving. So, thanks for sharing.
And guys, thank you for watching, and anything I can do. I really have a passion for helping small businesses, and usually that's happening through my company in the form of marketing. But in this situation, it's hopefully helping you guys in the form of a lifeline that the government's giving you. And at the end of the day, it's like, I feel like the backbone of this country is small businesses. And again, the relief isn't just out there for the airlines and the big companies. The relief is there for you guys. Take advantage of it. We need as many small businesses to survive this as we can.
100%. Well, should we wrap it up there?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for everybody for watching. Patrick, thank you so much, because what you just provided really is lifeline. Like, you provided a huge head start to what can be a lifeline for a business. So thank you. Really. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Be well.
Take care, everyone.